Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
Boys and girls, just because this edition of TIFF is in the rear view doesn't mean that there isn't still work to do. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals. We pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and a conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do. Subscribe to the podcast. Hit that subscribe button. Give us the old 5-star rating. Pretty much on whatever platform you use to get your podcast. We're at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google. It's pretty much all good. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So you can give us a like and subscribe there as well. We would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we're on the Instagram, or IG as the kids call it. At where else? We're at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because if we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit. On this episode, we are dipping back into the latest edition of the Toronto International Film Festival, which did happen in our fair city, but we missed half of it because, well, hell, we got COVID. It happens. But what the film we're talking about today is one from director Carolina Markowicz, and it's called Charcoal. It really was an interesting one, set in the Brazilian countryside about a family straining and struggling to care for their bedridden family member, but they have their lives change in a really strange way when a nurse who's, well, let's just say a little bit shady, offers a bit of a deal, a diabolical one, as it were. They put their elder to rest, and they host, well, let's just say an Argentinian drug kingpin who needs somewhere to hide. It's really a complex moral tale. It's almost funny. It's almost scary. It's got a lot of stuff going on in it, and it's a really interesting film that did play the festival and is doing its festival run as we speak. And like I said, we had the unique pleasure of sitting down and talking with writer-director Carolina Markowicz about sort of the origins of the film, how she got started, and so very much more. But if you're anywhere near a film festival and you see Charcoal, I do recommend checking it out because it is a good film. But first off, check out our talk with Carolina, because between you and me, it's a pretty good one.
All right, well, obviously, first off, just thank you so much for the time today, and congratulations on the film. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me speaking with you here. It's my pleasure.
Now, I guess my first question is, walk me through sort of the origin of the story, because, I mean, in watching it, it felt like something that might actually be going on, but maybe the audiences sort of outside of your country don't necessarily know about.
Well, this exact modus operandi, I don't know if it exists or not. I invented it about like killing someone and putting someone. It's something that I never heard of existing. Of course, there are people who hide all the time, criminals,
yeah.
But in this exact manner, I don't know. It's something that was invented. And for me, the idea came up because I grew up in the countryside, and I remember when I was a little kid that I met this woman that, like people in countryside, everyone knows everyone. So, and she was very tough, and she had like this husband that seemed very weak close to her, and he was always drunk and he didn't do anything, and she was like the boss of the family. And once she got in a fight with another person and she threatened her to death, and this got in my memory very strongly. And then as she lived in a house that was very distant from the city, not very, but some kind of distant.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, what could happen in that house, what she could do. And that was in my imaginary.
Well, I mean, it's a fascinating watch, and I mean, particularly sort of the relationship that your lead character has. I mean, in relation to sort of the church and the small town, and having to sort of navigate the ins and outs of that. Like, that felt very much something that was thematically important for you. Like, was it important to try to give this sort of real sort of dichotomy of the back and forth of how she's feeling as all this is going on?
Yeah, totally. It was very important to portray that, and how people sometimes use like God and the name of God and in the family to do things that they want to do, even though it's not exactly right. What is right, what is allowed in the name of God is fine. So all these religions also peculiarities too, and how people deal with that. This was something very important for me to think about and to portray in the film.
I love the actors. I mean, was this a big casting process for you? Because it felt like this is the kind of thing where if your actors don't quite understand the story that you want to tell, it's not going to work. Like, walk me through your casting process.
Absolutely. This exact sentence that you said is something that I was always fascinated by, and at the same time totally afraid of, because it's a weird tone. So if we are not all of us into it, it may be something that end up ruined. So it was very important to create this tone and to stick to it until the end. So Maeve Jenkins, the main actress, and Cesar Bordon, the main actor, they were with me from the very beginning of the process. 5 years ago, when I started writing it, they were already in the project, and we were speaking a lot and everything. And the other part of the cast, the other great actors, they came closer to the shootings, and we got all together 1 month from before the shootings to rehearse and to speak and to try to create that, and to put some rules for ourselves, like to try to create this weird atmosphere and never blink to the audience. Do not try to do something funny, even though it's absurd. We are not trying to be funny, never trying to be funny. So we were always very interested in creating this tone, this weird atmosphere and everything. And also the known actors, which were people from the city, the boy, and we all together, we became to live this reality as if it was very normal to everyone.
I love the visual aesthetic of the film as well, particularly inside the house. Like, was this something you found, or did you have to design it? Because just in terms of the way you follow the action sometimes when they're in there together, I really thought it looked fantastic.
Thank you. It's a mix. The location was amazing itself. For instance, when I first started writing the film, it was not a charcoal factory. It never existed in the film, and became the name of the film. But it was just a house far from the big city, the little city and the village. And but then the production manager, which is a person who's very close to me, he found this house, and then we were there going scouting, me, the assistant director, production designer, and DOP, and we fell in love with that environment. So many of these things the house had, we wanted to work with as much elements possible of reality of that place. And some are also the look of the production design, but always respecting the elements of the house and the looks of the house, the colors, the furniture and everything. We used everything from the city, like some objects from other houses, but we tried to follow as much possible the visual and the reality of the house.
No, I mean, when you're in the moment shooting something like this, I'm always curious because, I mean, even as you said before, the tone of this film, like there are moments that are obviously a little absurdist, but the conceit is very serious and it has to be owned that way. Like, how do you sort of thread the needle that way, especially when you're in the moment shooting?
Yeah, it was some scenes were like, it's very dramatic. It maybe bizarrely funny for us to watch or to do, but for the characters were such a drama, a real concern and a real struggle. So we are always like, oh, we are in this struggle, let's keep this way. We are the reality is that for them it's bizarre, it's tough, so we will beat them. And in some scenes we shot it and we were all very serious, and suddenly cut and we all started laughing, and the cast and the crew and like for instance the cake scene, like everything very serious, and then
Oh,
he
yeah.
comes to the cake and then something looks like a bubble gum that goes out of the cake, and I was like, and then cut, and then everyone started laughing. There were some moments of that, very serious too.
In watching this film, it very much feels like a piece of work that wants to kind of push against convention and push against what's expected and give something that's really unique and original. And I mean, I'm kind of curious, for you as a filmmaker and a storyteller, are those the kind of things you're drawn into? Sort of something with maybe a bit of familiarity where you're going to push the boundaries a little bit and give some little sort of weird tweaks to it?
Yeah, I love it. This weirdness, that the things that you are not expecting. I think life is like that, and it's so bizarrely funny sometimes and unusual. I have quite an obsession with this weirdness, and yes, I think this is something that may be present in everything that I have done, maybe, and everything that I will do, because it's part of the way that I see the world, maybe.
Well, I love that for sure. Now, I mean, this is a silly question, but it's one I always like to ask. What were the films that maybe got you into this business at a younger age, like that influenced you, that inspired you to sort of pick up a camera and be a storyteller?
Well, I am very inspired by many filmmakers, of course. Pedro Almodóvar is a filmmaker that I enjoy so much, for instance, because I think he can blend the drama with the comedy in a weird way, and I really like that. But I remember when I was a little kid and watching some films with my family, which we always used to do, and one film that I really remember watching and thinking like, wow, this is a profession, we can do that, it's crazy. It's Empire of the Sun by Steven Spielberg.
Oh, fantastic.
I was so like, this environment, this boy, and this, how do they create that? So, it moved me a lot in terms of how do they do that? I was very curious to know more.
And now you're playing in the same film festival as him. That must be a weird trip for you.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, wow, what's going on? Yeah, I feel very honored. It's like, it's crazy. It's amazing.
But you know what? I think you've done a hell of a piece of work here, and I can't wait for audiences to see it. And I hope you have a good time when you're here. And just again, congratulations on the work, and thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you so much, David. Very great pleasure speaking with you, and hope to see you in Toronto.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.